Last I left you, we were talking about the different levels at work in the legislative branch. And this is all about federalism. We just talked about federalism, the division of power between the federal government and the state and local governments. So we talked about at the local level, we have municipalities like the city of Beckley or the town of Mabscott. And then also counties are local levels of government. At the state level, for the legislative branch, we have the West Virginia State Legislature. And we talked about some of the things that they do, about being in session for only 60 days a year. I believe, this is some information about the West Virginia State Legislature. It's a bicameral legislature, meaning it has a West Virginia Senate and the House of Delegates, not House of Representatives. The West Virginia House is the House of Delegates. Each of these houses has a leader, and tomorrow these will change because tomorrow is election day. But currently, the president of the Senate is Mitch Carmichael, and he will not be the president of the Senate because he actually lost the primary to his opponent. But he's the president of the Senate in the state of West Virginia is also the lieutenant governor. So he's the lieutenant governor as well. But Mitch will be assisting Governor Justice if Governor Justice wins again. And the Speaker of the House of Delegates is Roger Hanshaw, and I believe he'll maintain his position. But you're only in session about 60 days a year, from January to mid-March, unless there's something weird going on, like, I don't know, teacher strike or something, and they may meet a little bit more. But the power for the West Virginia State Legislature and all state legislatures comes from the 10th Amendment, which is the Reserved Powers Amendment, where the powers are reserved for the states. Okay? So at the very top level of the legislative branch is what? The federal. What is the legislative branch of the federal government called? And together they make up Congress. Okay? So the United States Congress, just like any legislative branch, their job is to make laws. But they don't make state laws. They make laws that govern our entire country. West Virginia makes laws for the state of West Virginia. The power is separated. Okay? Do they enforce laws?
No.
Do they interpret laws?
No.
They only make them. Okay? Now, the United States Congress is also bicameral in that it has two houses. The houses that make up the United States Congress are the United States Senate and the House of Representatives. The Senate is based upon equality. Every state has two. The House of Representatives is based on population. So the larger your state, the more representation you get. Every 10 years, we do an accounting of our population in America and apportion out the representation accordingly. So here soon, it'll be reapportioned based upon the 2020 census. Each house of the United States Congress has leadership as well. The person who's in charge of the Senate is called the President Pro Tempore. And that person is Chuck Grassley. Chuck Grassley. The person who's in charge of the House is called the Speaker of the House. And that is currently Nancy Pelosi.
Are these roles changing on the
They can change because it has to do with which party has the majority leadership at that time. Chuck Grassley is a Republican because most of the senators in the Senate are Republican. Nancy Pelosi is a Democrat because most of the members of the House of Representatives are Democrats.
Does the Democratic Party, do they pick her to be?
It is chosen from within.
Okay, that's what I was curious.
Yes, so she chooses to, it's like an election inside the House.
Oh, okay.
So are there two representatives, like one for Republican and one for Democrat?
All right, so they are the majority leaders,
Okay.
and then there are minority leaders. So there's a Democrat minority leader in the Senate, and there's a Republican minority leader. I think they're called the whip in the House. All right? So good, excellent questions. So if you all, where does the United States Congress get their power from? Where in the Constitution?
Article 4. Enumerated powers.
Article 1, and predominantly Section 8 is where the majority of their power is found. So Article 1 of the Constitution. Okay? All right. It's power from Article 1 of the Constitution. Okay. So I'll just mention to you Article 1, Section 8. Article 1, Section 8 are known as the enumerated powers. Enumerated powers. So, what are the enumerated powers?
Power specifically.
That's right. These are powers that are literally, specifically written down in the Constitution. They're written. They're in there. You can read. They're black and white. Nothing's implied. Nothing has to be figured out. It's in there. Okay. They're all contained in Article 1, Section 8. All right. There are 18 of them. And they vary in what they are and what kind of responsibilities they have. But, you could probably guess what a few of them are, like collecting taxes. So these are powers that only the federal government can do. Now, some of them are shared, like the federal, like West Virginia can collect taxes.
Which is concurrent.
Those are concurrent. That's right. But as far as with what the enumerated powers are, just know that these are the powers of the legislative branch. These are the powers of Congress: collecting taxes, declaring war. The president cannot declare war. The president can ask for a war declaration, but it's the legislative branch's job to do that. Borrow money, also concurrent. Raise and support an army. Borrow money, also concurrent power. Raise and support an army.
Is borrowing money like a grant?
Borrowing money would be like, hey, China, we need some money, and we pay you back with interest. Or from the United States of American people by selling bonds. We borrow money from the people, the citizens. Raising and supporting an army. West Virginia can't do that. That's only a federal government thing. Yeah. Regulating commerce, especially interstate commerce. They can do that. They can, they can support a navy. No submarines in Lake Stevens. Operated by the state government. Not allowed. The federal government is in charge of naturalization laws. What does that mean? What are naturalization
That's
laws?
when you become a citizen.
That's right. These are the regulations by which determines how a person becomes a citizen of the United States who's not a citizen. Right? So they can change. They're not set in stone. They're codes of law. You guys were probably all born here, and that's how you became citizens. Well, that's part of these naturalization laws. All right. Anytime if citizens rebel in a way in which they uprise, or if foreign nations invade, the legislative branch is responsible for summoning the militia to repel those things. Coin money. Only the federal government is allowed to print coin money and regulate its value. Can you imagine if 50 states had 50 different currencies? Yeah, that's how it was under the Articles of Confederation. Organize, arm, and discipline the militia. So that's like court martials, things of that nature. Punish counterfeiters. They're the ones responsible for, the federal government's the ones responsible for making the money, so they can also punish people who are trying to also print money. Do you all know the part of the executive branch that is responsible for catching counterfeiters? That's a good guess.
Wait, what?
FBI.
Okay, there is a part of the FBI, but the Secret Service.
Really?
Oh,
Yeah.
That's
Counterfeiters?
their whole
There's a
objective.
BuzzFeed Unsolved case about
Well,
that.
what is the Secret Service mainly known for?
Protecting the
Protecting the president, but they also are in charge of catching counterfeiters. So, it's just another aspect of their jobs. Establishing a post office. There's no West Virginia post office. It's all United States post office. Creating courts. Well, creating federal courts. Because the state of West Virginia can create state courts.
That's like a concurrent.
That would be a concurrent power. Punish crimes at sea.
Pirates.
Well, if you're in the middle of the ocean, are you in America?
Mm,
No, but if you're an American vessel, you could be subject to American rules and laws. So, punishing crimes at sea, but you're not in a state, so that would fall to the federal government. And the federal government also has exclusive jurisdiction over the nation's capital, Washington D.C. Since this was written, 1789. The city of Washington has a mayor, and they're kind of more self-sufficient. It's not like the president's overseeing the local government aspects of Washington, D.C. There's a mayor. They have their own municipal police force. It's not like the president's telling people what to do, okay?
Isn't DC going to become a state?
Is D.C. going to become a state?
Yeah.
It's possible, but I don't foresee it happening. So is Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico has talked about becoming a state for years, but Cuba almost became a state a long time ago, in the 19th century. Okay, so they're literally in there. You can read them word for word in the Constitution. The enumerated powers.
Can you point out which ones are the concurrent powers?
Well, I have a whole slide for concurrent powers. I think. Maybe I don't. So I will. Collect taxes. Borrow money. Create courts. One's federal courts, one's state courts. And of these, those are the only ones that are concurrent. Of these. Okay. But like there are other concurrent powers like building roads. All right. Okay, now, so are these the only powers that Congress has?
No.
No, they also have a bunch of other powers, but they're not written down. Well, how do we know they have them?
Implied powers?
That's right. Congress has implied powers, which is the 18th clause in Article 1, Section 8. That Congress can make all laws necessary and proper for carrying out powers. So that clause is also known as the elastic clause. That's what we call it. There was no such thing as elastic in 1787. It didn't exist. They had rubber, but they didn't have elastic. We call it the elastic clause because it gives Congress the ability to stretch its authority to make all laws that are necessary and proper. So, for example, Congress can collect taxes. Therefore, it is implied that if you don't pay your taxes, can Congress punish you for that? Yes, it is implied that it's against the law to not pay your taxes. It doesn't say anywhere in the Constitution that it's against the law to pay your taxes.
Does it not?
But because it's implied, all right? It is implied that the government can punish you for not paying your taxes, all right? So, look, another thing, like we said that one of the enumerated powers is that Congress has the ability to regulate commerce. And that's, I thought I could do this. Well, guess not. I thought I had, there it is. They can regulate commerce, which is here. Okay? So if Congress has the ability to regulate commerce, can they make laws restricting certain goods and services?
Surely.
Can you guys buy alcohol?
No.
Not yet.
It's just a good, or it's just a good, but there are restrictions on that. Federal restrictions. Also, you can't go into the grocery store and buy certain narcotics. You're not allowed to do that. There are certain commodities which are heavily restricted or just outright outlawed. And that's because the federal government has the ability to regulate commerce. Okay? So, and they can change if Congress all of a sudden decides we're going to allow for people to purchase drugs in stores. They could do that, like marijuana. All right? All right, so those are, so just because it's not written in there doesn't mean they can't do it. There are implied powers. That doesn't mean, however, they can make any laws that they want. All right? It's not, they don't have unlimited power. All right? Now, when it comes to limiting the power of the branches, each branch has powers over the other branches. What part of the Constitution calls for that, where each branch can check the powers of the other branches? Checks and balances. And these are pretty much all the checks and balances. Okay? So in this particular section, this unit, we're doing the legislative branch, which is Congress. We know what the legislative branch is comprised of, and we know that the legislative branch's job is to make laws. All right? But there are certain things that each of the other two branches can do to have power over the legislative branch. And at the same time, the legislative branch also has some things that they can do to have power over the executive branch. Okay? So, for example, if, Congress makes a law, the president has to sign that before it becomes law. All right? If the president doesn't sign it, it just dies. It's called a pocket veto. The president just doesn't do anything with it. Even though he doesn't formally veto it, just by not touching it, that's pretty much a veto because it has to be signed. Or the president can just outright veto it. Say, sorry, try again. This is no good. But then Congress can say, okay, we're going to try again, but we don't want to make any changes to it. We're just going to vote on it again if we can get a certain amount of senators and House of Representatives members to vote for it. 2/3, by the way, 66.7%. Then it can override the president's veto. And these are all processes that are the individual processes that are the checks and balances. Okay? The judicial branch can also say, okay, well, you've made this law, Congress. Well, guess what? That law's no good. It's unconstitutional because it's not fair. It doesn't do something correctly. Doesn't adhere to a certain aspect of the Constitution. And the judicial branch of the Supreme Court has the authority to hear any law, to look at any law that Congress makes and rule it as constitutional or unconstitutional. Okay? And these powers go back and forth. Okay? The powers the legislative branch has over the judicial branch. Well, in order to become a member of the judicial branch, the president has to appoint you, and the Senate has to confirm. So that's a pretty big power, pretty powerful thing that they have over one another. Okay? The legislative branch can also impeach people on either branch. So we're going to do you're going to see this chart quite a bit because every branch has them. Every branch has the checks and balances, and you need to know them inside and out by the end of the term. Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you a little information about the United States Congress. As I told you, it's bicameral. The first one I want to tell you about is the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives has 435 members. 435 members. in the House of Representatives. It is a lot. It is a lot, and it's grown over time. If we added a state, it'd grow again. So it's a pretty big building that they have to meet in to have 435 people all at the desk.
Only 5 of those, or 3 of them
That's right. That's right. The number of representatives each state has is proportional to that state's population. The word that we use for that is called apportionment. 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 I'm not sure if it's a vocabulary word.
are. It was on Baker versus Carr.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Which has to do with definitely the legislative branch. Okay? So the number of representatives each state is proportional to that state's population. And we know this because we have the census, and the apportionment occurs every 10 years with the census. Apportionment happens every 10 years with the census. The census occurs in every year that ends in 0. So the next census is 2030.
Whoa.
All right. We just had one.
Yeah.
All right.
Did anything in West Virginia change as far as like?
Didn't we get 2?
I think if anything, it probably lost.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I have. I'll be honest, guys. I haven't looked.
I think we lost. I didn't think that was on that.
Okay.
I think they mentioned that we lost one.
All right. Now, if you are elected to be a United States House of Representatives for your state, you will serve a 2-year term with no limit as to how many you can serve. With no limit as to how many you can serve. All right. Currently, you guys mentioned it. How many do we have?
3.
We have 3. All are Republicans. Do you all know who yours is right now? The one that represents you, the one that you would vote for tomorrow if you could vote? Carol Miller. You know who she's running against?
Paula Jean Swearingen.
Mm-mm.
Oh, is it another woman?
Is it the one you stayed in high school?
That's for the Senate race. It was not in high school. It was like a few years ago.
Oh. You're stuck with it.
Hard pass. All right. These are your 3 that are currently they're all Republicans, and Carol Miller is the one that represents you. All right. Now, as far as the Senate goes, the Senate is also part of the legislative branch. It has 100 members. It has nothing to do with the census. The census does not apply to the United States Senate because why?
It's equal.
It is equal, whereas each state has how many? 2. 50 states times 2 equals 100. It's a nice even number, but this is a rare period in American history where we have 100. For the most part, throughout American history, we've not had 100 because as a state gets added, that state gets 2 senators. So if another state gets added, we'd have 102, and we'd have 51 stars on the flag.
That would be weird.
All right.
Yeah, we're gonna make that work.
Well, we've made it work we've had a different flag for every state added, so we'd make it work. Our flag hasn't always looked like that, guys. You are aware of that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So,
Respectful volume.
100 each. The Senate has 100 members. Each state has 2, regardless of the population. Rhode Island has 2. California has 2. Doesn't matter. All right. This is part of what during the Constitutional Convention there was an argument over it, and this is what they came to. What was that called? That argument?
The Great Compromise.
The Great Compromise with the New Jersey plan and the Virginia plan. The Virginia plan was for big states. The New Jersey plan was for small states. The New Jersey plan got the Senate. The Virginia plan got the House. All right. So if you are elected to be a United States Senator, how long is your term?
6 years.
You serve a 6-year term. So it's significantly 3 times as long as a House of Representative member. So when elected, a senator serves 6-year terms.
What happens if like one passes away
The governor of the state gets to appoint a replacement until the next election. Like it's funny, when President Obama won his first election in 2008, he was a senator from Illinois. The governor of Illinois was a corrupt dude, and he like accepted money from people who wanted to be a senator. Like, you want to be a senator? Whoever pays me the most money can have it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, he got caught, and he's, big time trouble. All right. Now, West Virginia just has 2 senators, just like everyone else. Currently, one is a Democrat and one is a Republican, and only one of them is up for election tomorrow. So who is the Democrat?
Joe Manchin.
Joe Manchin. And the Republican?
Shelley Moore Capito.
Shelley Moore Capito. All right?
This one's up for election.
Shelley Capito.
So she can do it again, but Manchin can't.
Manchin it's not an election year for him, so he's going to be the senator.
How did the years get off?
Okay, they do that on purpose. They stagger it so that, like, every state's is staggered. So that,
Okay, I was curious. I thought that was,
yeah.
I thought that was something weird that happened with us.
No, every state does it. With everything. Their House members, everything. I mean, imagine if you were, California and you had 53 members in the House of Representatives. That's a lot of staggering. But they do it, okay? They do it. Okay? I'll stop there. You guys have questions so far? We'll do the West Virginia State Legislature info, I guess Thursday when we do notes. So tomorrow you're going to talk to your parents about voting. Just simply ask them who they're going to vote for and why. You don't have to argue. You don't have to fight. Just have a conversation about the election with them. And you can look on Schoology for what we're doing the rest of the week. So I know we're going to have a couple of interactive online games I want you to do Wednesday. Thursday notes, Friday, the power check assignment, you will, it's really about the checks and balances. So you can refer to this if you really need to. Okay, if you need to. You can also Google checks and balances and it'll come up with tons of charts. Okay, I mean, it's not a new concept. All right, so if you have questions or anything in the week until I see you again, please do not hesitate to shoot me a message on Schoology. If you'd like to leave a comment, feel free to. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. And we'll, we may have a brief discussion about the election if we're able to. All right.